And everyone, welcome back to the Rangers review after Rangers 1, Aberdeen 1. Myself and Chris Jack, live from Pittodrie here to break down the game in about 15 minutes. We'll, of course, be live tomorrow morning to go over the game, having watched it back in a bit more detail. You can read Chris's thoughts from the game on the website. Plenty of reaction from the manager and his press conference as well, which you can also watch on the YouTube page. And remember, if you've not subscribed, to subscribe to our Black Friday deal and take advantage of that. Right, Chris, let's get into that game. Top line, it's a missed opportunity, regardless of the expected goals, which Clement mentioned in a few of his post-match interviews. Regardless of the fact that I think Rangers over the course did enough to win that. I think they set themselves up for a difficult task by the way they started the game. And Clement, in one of his post-match interviews, said if we'd played for the last 60 minutes, or I think it was 60 minutes for the whole game, then we would have won it. Arguably, still should have come away with all 3 points. Do rescue a point at the end, which means they don't lose any ground in the title race. And I do think that the performance had some good aspects to it. But I guess the overall point, Chris, is that if you want to win a title, you gotta take these type of opportunities. We've seen Rangers not do that far too consistently over the last year and a half, the last couple of years, and that's another one of those moments today. You were at the game. Give us your thoughts, what the atmosphere was like, what the overall game was like, and kind of what you take away from it.
I think you've summed it up well there, Josh. No matter what chances you look at, no matter what positives you take from it, either individually or collectively, ultimately it's only a point, and ultimately it's 2 points dropped. It's an afternoon. We spoke about it before the game. All the Rangers fans coming up to Pittodrie this afternoon, fully aware of the significance of this game after Celtic's draw at home to Motherwell on Saturday. It was just one of these games that it could have had such a kick-on effect for Rangers if they managed to get the job today. The manager mentioned momentum a couple of weeks ago and said that's something that stops. Well, Rangers' momentum has stopped a wee bit this afternoon. It's not a disaster. It's another point. It's our game unbeaten. Yes, there's all these caveats to it, but ultimately it's not really good enough if you're going to win titles. If you're going to really put pressure on, it's the type of game that just has to be won. And once again, Rangers haven't been able to do that. Time will tell how costly it is over the course of the season. If they end up losing the league by a couple of points, you could say, well, it was that afternoon at Pittodrie. If this suddenly starts a faltering run and they drop 3 or 4 points, or drop points in 3 or 4 games over this next run, you can say, well, Pittodrie was the one that cost them. The only way that this doesn't become a really costly afternoon is if you don't repeat the mistakes. You go into this next run of games. The Ibrox games should take care of themselves, fingers crossed. A couple of tricky away games in this spell as well, or ending with the Old Firm game at the end of the year. If Rangers can not make the same mistakes, if they can start better, not lose, which are really, really poor goal, if they can take their chances, then you can say, well, Pittodrie was a blip. It has to be a blip, because if we're still talking about these points another couple of times over the next 6 weeks or so, Rangers won't win the league. And it's a type of afternoon that they really can't afford to repeat too often.
Yeah, and I guess that's the kind of tension that Clement takes this job within, Chris, because if this is a whole new group of players, if it's the start of a season, then you maybe look at this game and you think, right, the Rangers should have won that. They hit the crossbar twice. I think the expected goals is about 2.5 to 0.5, although that's obviously, you have to caveat that with the fact that Aberdeen were defending for large parts of the game. And Clement's still undefeated. The signs, as we've discussed, I think, have been positive so far. But then you've also got this in the background, this constant murmur that is this squad. Can they actually win the title? Do they have the mentality to win games when it counts? Now, they kept going again today. They get a late equaliser when they maybe wouldn't have done so in the past. And Sam Lammers has a big chance. So it's actually, if you think about it, not too dissimilar from the kind of opportunity that Danilo gets to win the game against Hearts a few weeks ago, Chris. Maybe it just falls to the wrong person in that kind of individual scenario. But and Clement, I guess, in this press conference, which we can discuss just now, was kind of keen to caveat that. But the quote that stood out to me from his press conference, Chris, was, the moment we started winning the duels after 50 minutes, we started to dominate. If you have the expected goals we had today, we should have scored more goals. I thought what Rangers did manage to do after the second half was they treated the second half from the start like they needed to. I thought there was more intensity. They were managed to box Aberdeen in, hit the bar on a couple of occasions. and did create a number of opportunities. So there is all that going on, which you can kind of rationalise and analyse in the kind of cold light of day. But in the backdrop, this will just still be seen as a missed opportunity, of course. What do you take away from what Clement said in this post-match press conference, which people can obviously read or watch on the website and YouTube channel?
It's hard to disagree with it too much, because on the face of it, he is right. It's a game that Rangers should have won. I think the stats and the actual, just watching the game back, tell you Rangers dominated possession, dominated the chances, conceded a really sloppy goal. It's not the kind of goal that teams at this level should be losing. We've not really seen that many defensive issues from Clement's side over the last few weeks. It's not something we've really had to discuss a lot, because they've not looked like losing goals as poor as that. It's a long ball, it's a flick on, it's a really good finish, but come on.
The way you can see that, you're right. I mean, David says this is a phrase that my dad would use whenever describing bad defending, which is criminal. And I think that sums it up quite well, because the finish is excellent, but it's too easy. It's back to front. It's not as if it's a back to front move that completely pulls apart a defence. I don't know if it's Tavernier's initially marking the man or Goldson is, but both of them are kind of caught on their heels, and then obviously 𝐿𝐤 gets the run on Balogun. But it's the type of goal, Chris, that if you're not going to start and really dominate the game, don't go and concede a goal like that, which Rangers did, and obviously it gives them an uphill climb, doesn't it?
I was having a conversation with someone just before the game started. I was like here early on, and we're talking about how do you see it going, and I made the point, like, games like going to Pittodrie, going to Tynecastle, going to Easter Road, they've got this kind of historical tag of it's a difficult place to go, it's a tricky game. Going to Livingston is tricky because of the pitch, same as going to Killie.
Yeah.
In reality, Rangers are a better team than all of these sides, and if you come here and you win your battles, as the manager said, but the better team should win these games more often than not. And Rangers seem to fall into this trap of saying it's a difficult place to go and have to win the battle before you win the war and that type of stuff. They are the better football inside. They're better manager, more experienced manager, better players, because they're at a better football club. And I don't get why Rangers still fall into this trap of Pittodrie's a really tricky place to go. It's not anymore. If you are a really good side and you can prove you're a really good side, you should be able to come to Pittodrie and win a game. You should be able to go to Tynecastle and win, regardless of the atmosphere. You should be able to go to Easter Road, regardless of how kind of hostile it is, and win the game, because Rangers are a better football side, and Rangers are a side who should be challenging for titles. Aberdeen are not. Aberdeen are where they are in the league because they deserve to be. So it annoys me at times that Rangers seem to fall into this trap of, it's a tricky place to go, we'll take a point. Well, no, because dropping 2 points here could cost you the league. And it's the only game where you say we'll take a point should be Parkhead away, and even then, Old Firm game, anything can happen. There's no reason why you can't go to Parkhead looking to win the game, and I would hope in a few weeks' time Rangers do go there looking to win the game. But every other team in the league is inferior to Rangers, and they should be 9 times out of 10 beaten. So I think in the grand scheme of things, it's not a disaster. It's not a rip it up and start again, bin the manager, and everybody has to go nuclear again. Thankfully, the last few weeks, the manager has done enough to build a bit of feel-good factor, to rebuild a bit of confidence, to put a bit of spirit back into the squad and the support. It's not an afternoon to go and start pressing panic buttons. It could be, though, if the same mistakes, as I said earlier on, if the same mistakes are made a couple of times over the next 6 weeks, then we say, well, there's actually a bigger issue at play here. But that doesn't get away from the fact that it's a really disappointing afternoon overall for Rangers.
Yeah, and I think you sum it up well, that as Clement says, if you press like Rangers did or win the duels from 50 minutes onwards, you probably win the game, and then you negate the threat that Aberdeen have. And listen, they pressed high in the first half. Their front two, I thought, were pretty effective, and that is difficult to control a game when it's like that. But no, I definitely agree with your overall point, Chris. I think sometimes in these matches, Rangers can still be guilty of getting dragged into playing the game like the opposition wants to play it, as opposed to like they want to play it. And I think the sign of a good football team is when they don't have to compromise too much domestically. Getting to a couple of comments. Joe here with a bit of a more optimistic point of view says, we're not going to win every single game. Unfortunately, going away to Aberdeen for a 12 p.m. kickoff after an international break just spells drop points. Barisic and Lammers were killing it, though. Alan says, a missed opportunity we can't afford to miss. I think that sums it up pretty well, as does Joe's comment for me. Stephen says, sleeping from the start, 𝐿𝐤 ineffective and missing drive. I guess to Joe's initial point, as you say, Chris, if Rangers go and win the next however many games, then they can look back on this as a point gained. They've not done enough in the past yet to for us to sit here and call it that. Now, had Rangers won every game up until this point, and you had this in the most recent title-winning season, even when, remember, a game won a game away at Hamilton where Alan McGregor had one of the games of his life, and there you could say, right, you got away with one, but it's a bigger overall context of you think, okay, success could follow, and Clement's first month in the job has certainly suggested that in isolation that it can. The overall context, again, that he assumes means that trust is expensive, shall we say, between the Rangers support and the current team, which I think leads to that view which Joe touches upon there. Chris, we've got loads of talking points to get through this week, 𝐿𝐤 being one of them, but just on the missed opportunities, battle again with two big headers, especially the one before the break where he hits the bar. Tom Lawrence, who I thought had some really nice moments as well. Danilo with a couple of opportunities in and around the penalty box. Rangers probably still had enough to get something more out of the game, as we discussed. But on the point of 𝐿𝐤 and the wingers coming onto the pitch, Cifuentes obviously played in the middle today. That midfield continues to be a talking point because I don't think either 𝐿𝐤 or Sima had their most effective games today, even if in the first half that right-hand side had some nice fluidity to it. And this conversation of 𝐿𝐤 on the right doesn't seem to be going away as it's not over the last couple of weeks.
No, I know it's something you've also tried to address over the break and try and bring a bit of kind of clarity and clear thinking to a conversation that's really kind of splitting the fans right now. I think it's difficult because we all know what Todd 𝐿𝐤 can bring to the side. We know what he's capable of. I don't think that position that he's playing at present, wider on the right hand side, I don't think that's getting the best out of him. But that doesn't mean to say that he can't bring more to the party within that role. So I think the manager is going to have a call to make sooner rather than later. Also, now that Matondo's back, it obviously taken a couple of games to get fully back up to speed. But you do have two more natural wide men in that squad now, and that's also with Ross McCausland come into that occasion as well. So the manager does have options there. Is 𝐿𝐤 as useful as he can be in the side in that role? Probably not. We've seen also Tom Lawrence come into the side today. I thought he did okay. Actually, a couple of nice moments. If he'd found the top corner of that one, I'd be up there in terms of goal of the season. A really good strike. But I just think it's still not the finished article. But 7-8 weeks or so in, it was never going to be the finished article. The manager is still, I don't know if he's still in his observation period or not. We'll need to ask him that to see if he still classes that as that period or not. But Rangers are still far from the finished article in terms of the entire side, and certainly middle to front. There's a number of moving parts in there. It probably won't be fully addressed until the transfer window to see what he does in terms of adding to the squad and maybe players leaving the squad. So I think the 𝐿𝐤 conversation is not going to go away. But if he was to play more centrally, no matter where he is on the pitch, I do think he can be contributing more overall at present because he is capable of it. But as you say, the numbers don't lie. And in terms of his goals and his assists over the course of the season, it's not really what we're needing from Todd 𝐿𝐤. We need someone to produce far more regularly than he has done, regardless of where he's actually starting games on the pitch.
Yeah, the late Lammers chance, Chris. Again, the reason I said I don't think it's dissimilar to that Danilo goal against Hearts. I think Rangers are probably better today than they were in that home game against Hearts over the course. If that goes in, it's a very different conversation, and it's difficult to always kind of get the right tone when those fine margins are in place. It's not as if Rangers were performed terribly throughout. It is, though, the case that there's some familiar failings. There's that old question about can they really capitalise and put the pressure on when Celtic slip up. So I guess just to try and summarise, kind of as things were at the top of the table, Rangers haven't gained any ground. They haven't let any ground slip. But to be champions this season, if they're going to progress, they need to get to a position where they do capitalise and punish Celtic when they slip up, because that's how it works in title races, and they can't rely on that to happen. They've only got to rely on themselves. And I think that's probably the key point to take away from today. Yes, there's, I think, a lot of good signs under Philippe Clement. He's not going to be able to solve anything, everything in a short space of time. Still working within the limitations of this squad and on the basis of chances created. I think there's a fair amount to look at and think, well, maybe they should have deserved a little bit more. In equal measure, the wider picture that he steps into, maybe the wider story, to use his language, and the one that he's trying to adapt, I think there still needs to be more evidence that for Rangers to win this title, if they are going to even be kind of really seriously considered in that, they need to be a team who's really ruthless when the rivals slip up, regardless of the game, regardless of the chances, regardless of what ifs or could have beens, because you only win a title by ultimately getting the results in games like this.
Definitely. I think we all laid out the dream scenario of, well, you go and win 12 games, it puts you in the next round of Europa League, it puts you as League Cup champions, and it puts you in a really strong position in terms of the Premiership. 12 wins was always going to be a really big ask. Obviously, Rangers have got that run off to a disappointing start. It's not been the start that they wanted in that regard. But it's now going to be all about the reaction. I say, if they go and make the same mistakes in a couple of weeks, or 2 or 3 times next couple of weeks, the title race then disappears. The Premiership season fizzles out, and we then get to the end of the season asking the same questions about the same players. If they can react in the right way, and they can prove that it is just one of those afternoons where a wee slice of luck, perhaps, and a Lawrence one goes in, Balogun's header goes in, it's a completely different conversation. People will still rightly be upset about the level of performance in some regards, but either of those moments, the ball finds the back of the net, people forget about it, and it's, well, we've managed to go out there, and it then becomes a different question of mentality of, we've ground out a really good win at a difficult place to go. So it is fine margins, but fine margins define and decide title races, and Rangers, for too often over the last few seasons, have found themselves on the wrong end and the wrong side of those fine margins. They need to be on the right side of them. If they are, it can still be a successful season.
Yeah, well summarised. I concur. Right, Chris, you're going to get back down the road. I'll be on with Derek in the morning. We'll have lots of content to come this week. Remember, if you have not subscribed, now with our Black Friday deal is the best time to do so. Just an idea of some of the things you'll get over the course of today and tomorrow. Aside from all your match coverage, we'll have a detailed look at the game tomorrow with help from our partners at StatsBomb, a colour piece from the game, trying to mull over some of these questions that Chris and I have tried to answer for 18 minutes or so. But we'll be back to discuss that in more detail on the morning briefing tomorrow. Until then, thanks for watching, and we'll speak to you soon. Bye for now.